I'll start with the hot topic of the moment, breaking news about President Trump. He told me that the blockade of the Iranian ports has been implemented and that the conflict is about to end. Yesterday, I sat down with the commander-in-chief for an exclusive interview at the White House, where he told me all about this, as well as the economy, expectations for oil prices, and the reconciliation package. Check it out. Mr. President, thank you for talking with us. We really appreciate it. Did you have a real reaction to the blockade? Are you satisfied with the response since you implemented this blockade in the Strait of Hormuz?
It's been quite impressive. I thought it would happen. They reacted to it until we obliterated them, and that seems to be an even bigger reaction than before. So let's see. What matters is just the final result, and we're doing very well. We started with Venezuela. We showed everyone how good it is. I built, rebuilt, and built. In my first term, I didn't imagine I would need the armed forces so much, but we have the best in the world. Incomparable, think about it. They don't have a Navy or an Air Force. Everything was destroyed. They don't have any anti-aircraft equipment. They don't have radar or leaders. The current leaders are a new regime, and honestly, we find them reasonable. By comparison, they're actually quite reasonable. It really is a new regime, and I think we're doing very well. But what really matters is the final result, and maybe that will happen soon. Who knows?
You told me on Sunday that you think they will finally agree to stop building a nuclear weapon. How will you verify that?
First, if they don't do that, we won't make the deal. So there is no deal. The whole point is that they simply cannot have nuclear weapons. And if they're going to have a nuclear weapon, we will live with it for a while, but I don't know how much longer they can survive. I don't know how much longer they can hold on because, they have been hit very hard. And as an example, we could destroy all their bridges in an hour. We could destroy all their power plants in an hour. We don't want to do that because one day you'll have to rebuild, and it takes 10 years to rebuild a bridge. Even if you're Trump, it takes a long time. It takes a long time, and power plants are just as bad. Let's see what happens.
Did the Chinese or Saudis resist the blockade of the Strait of Hormuz?
No, I absolutely didn't have any.
Regarding domestic affairs, what are the main priorities for the economy for the rest of the year?
We're doing great. Look, I hit 50,000 points on the Dow Jones, which they said was impossible in just 4 years. I did it in 1 year. I reached the 7,000 mark on the S&P in less than a year, which was a number. As you know, you reported on that. They said, if you reach those numbers at the end of 4 years, I did it in 1 year. And I said, now we need a detour to a place called Iran. We need to stop them from having a nuclear weapon. And what if you told me that in the middle of all this, we would have a stock market as good as it was 2 months ago? Pretty close. That we would have oil, that we would be selling oil, that oil would be at 92 or whatever it is now instead of 200, because a lot of people were saying, it's going to reach 200. That's in the middle of everything. Now, I think we're doing very well. And maybe people assume that we're going to win this. We defeated them militarily, completely. The only thing they have is the Gulf. And I think now we control the Strait, as they call it. And I think now I don't know how they can hold on.
That's exactly what I mean. The scenario has changed. In just 1 month, oil prices went up by 50%, and the stock market was tough in the first quarter.
Yes.
Are stocks still up?
They're up. Honestly, I thought it would be a lot more. And I was willing to do that to prevent a nuclear weapon from being used against this country or the Middle East. Anyone in the Middle East, they were going to wipe out the Middle East to prevent that. It would certainly be worth being much higher than it is now. If you told me we'd only be at $92 a barrel, I would have been very surprised.
All right.
And you know what? I'm really happy, and it's going to drop a lot as soon as this is over. And I think it could end very soon. If they're smart, this will be over soon.
Overall, regarding the economic impact, do you expect a decrease in growth or an increase in inflation?
This has an impact because we went through this, whatever it was, for 6 weeks. There will be an impact, but I think it will fully recover. Somehow I was misquoted. I think oil will drop back to the levels it was at. You know, they said I expected oil to be high during the midterm elections. I don't expect that. I think we'll be about where we were, maybe even lower. When this is over, I think the stock market will soar. It's already up. Again, nobody thought we could reach 50,000 on the Dow or 7,000 on the S&P during my 4 terms, and we hit numbers that nobody thought were possible.
You have been talking about a reconciliation program with the Republicans.
Yes.
Can you explain to the public why the reconciliation package is important and why you want it on your desk by June?
Without Democratic votes, we used reconciliation to pass the proposals. This bill summed up 4 years into one, and now we're doing even more things. But you know, this big and wonderful bill, I think it's better. It should be called the tax cut bill because you don't pay tax on tips. And look how that's working. No taxes on Social Security or on overtime. We have people, I see this on the show, I watch your show, it's great. We have people making $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000. They never imagined this, and it's turning out better than expected for people.
But the reconciliation rules require deficit reduction, right? How are you going to ensure that spending goes down?
We need to follow the rules. Without them, we couldn't include this. We couldn't present it. And no one believes in this more than I do. The only thing I really stood up for was the military sector. We built this great army that we have now, and everyone recognizes that, whether it's China or Russia. Our armed forces became the largest in the world during my first term, including the Space Force. Did you know that many of the things that work well come from the Space Force? It was great. It was an excellent addition when we decided to create the Space Force.
Included in the reconciliation bill, besides customs funding and ASC, anything else?
Well, that's basically what we're doing. That's basically it, because the Democrats don't want to do it. Then we add some things as we go along. But you know, you've heard the expression, we want to keep things lean, because we want to make sure that I had the safest border in our country's history. No one got in. I'm not even sure I can believe that. But the Democrats run the numbers. They actually, you know, the agency that does this tends to side with the Democrats, to say the least. In the last 9 months, not a single person has crossed the border illegally. Now compare that to 25 million people crossing through Gilson and Alento.
I visited the border 6 times. I saw it. I understand what you're saying.
They were coming in by the millions every week, flooding the country with no control at all. I know most of those leaders. They're very smart and clever. Whether they're educated or not, they're all street smart and know how to handle themselves very well. They don't send the good people. In a caravan of 25 or 30,000 people, you don't have the good ones. There are people who, even if they're not criminals, don't want to work or want social assistance, or they send all these people to our country. What the Democrats did to us should never be forgotten.
Add the Save America Act to reconciliation?
I'd love to do that, and we'll look into it. But it should be called Save America, as I said. A lot of people prefer to use the SAVE Act. Nobody knows. It's Save America. It's voter identification. You have to be a citizen to vote. Be a citizen. Ideally, you'd end mail-in voting once and for all.
Can you make this a budget item?
It's good for the military. You know, they need to be able to use it. Someone who is sick or who is away, etc. You vote by mail. But it should be reduced to be fair.
Today is tax day. What do you want people to know about the changes you made to the tax code? And what is the importance of the refunds they are receiving?
Right? The refunds are really significant and make it much less complicated to file an income tax return. People are noticing this. Everyone is reporting it because now it has come into effect. And people are getting refunds of $5,000, $8,000, $11,000 that they never even imagined. It ended up being as good or even better than I said it would be.
Is that going to be enough to make up for the increase in gas prices?
It will be. Why? Gas prices are going to drop very soon, and they'll be much lower.
Will gas prices drop before the midterm elections?
They should be much lower before the midterms. Much lower, he suggested. I mean, that's one of the premises, to prevent a country that can't have nuclear weapons. If you give a nuclear weapon to Iran, do you want to see stock markets go down? You won't have a country, the world will explode. You can't do that. You can't do that. Assuming that's resolved. And I believe it will be very soon. It could be soon. But when it's resolved, gas prices will drop quickly and dramatically. And current gas prices, the cost per barrel, what it costs to fill your tank, the price per gallon, any way you look at it, the numbers will drop, electricity will drop. That powers almost everything, not just cars, but the economy. If you reduce that, one of the reasons I was successful in my first term was keeping gas prices low and energy cheap. Look, if I hadn't gone into Iran, which would have been terrible, for 47 years, no president had the courage to do that, and they should have done it. And I know at least one, and I think all those who are still alive are watching and saying, we should have done that. That should have been done long before me. It would have been much easier. What Obama did with that nuclear deal with Iran was the worst deal ever made. That gave them a path to a nuclear weapon, a short-term path to a nuclear weapon. I ended that. It was the best decision. They would have had a nuclear weapon 4 years ago. We bombed with the B-2s 8 months ago. They would have had the nuclear weapon in 1, maybe 2 weeks. And they would have used it against Israel and the Middle East, and they would have used it against us too. And not just against Israel, by the way, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, countries that were shocked when they were hit. These countries didn't expect to be hit because they were going after those countries. They were going to take control of the Middle East, and we stopped them.
China is trying to surpass us by a lot, and we want to defeat them.
We want to defeat them.
And I would like to ask you
about AI, but we also want to defeat them.
Are we going to defeat them?
Well, we're leading in AI because of me. We're in the lead. I'm letting them build their own plants and become utilities. I told Zuckerberg, congratulations, now you're in the power business. If I didn't do that, it was my idea. They're building plants, and if they used the grid, it wouldn't handle it. I said, to build, generate your own energy. And then they're going to return the excess energy to our grid. All of this is under construction right now. So we're surpassing China in this and in the economy. The economy is great. Even if I didn't want to make this trip to Iran, it would still be a trip. I said, we'll have to do this for the good of the world.
So the GDP grows this year.
Yes, we did. There were months when I was at zero with NATO. We support them, but they don't support us. We spend. Did you see the chart that came out a few days ago with a huge red ball that represented us and all those little satellite balls representing the money spent on military matters in NATO? And it's ridiculous, and they should have done better. They should have said, let's send someone. It's an option, a small operation compared to a large operation. NATO didn't support us, and if they're not here now, they won't be there for us in the future. So why do we spend hundreds of billions a year on NATO if they're not with us? And if they don't support us regarding Iran, they won't be with us in something much bigger.
Did you see that Great Britain had the biggest downgrade in growth forecast among the G7? Yes, their economy was impacted.
It's the United Kingdom, I would say zero from NATO. We support them, but they don't support us. We spend. Did you see the chart that came out a few days ago with a huge red ball representing us and all those little satellite balls representing the money spent on military matters in NATO? And it's ridiculous. And they should have done better. They should have said, let's send someone. It's really a small operation compared to a big one. But NATO wasn't there for us. That means if they're not here for us now, they won't be there. So why are we spending hundreds of billions of dollars a year on NATO if they're not going to be with us? If they're not going to be with us regarding Iran, they won't be with us on an issue much bigger than Iran.
Did you see that the United Kingdom had the biggest downgrade in growth forecast among the G7? Yeah, well, their economy took a hit.
The United Kingdom, I would say, they need to stop with the windmills and open up the North Sea. They have the North Sea in Aberdeen, Scotland. It's the largest, one of the most incredible oil fields in the world. There's still enough oil for hundreds of years, and do you know what they do? They shut it down because they want so much from the oil companies. The oil companies are begging them to open it. They called me, please, talk to them. They made it impossible because of the environmentalists, the terrible environmentalists who harm that country so much. And now they're betting on wind turbines, destroying their fields everywhere. They have that problem. And there's still the immigration problem. What did Europe do with immigration? Oh, most countries, not all. What they did with immigration is horrible.
Do we still have the same relationship with Italy now, with Giorgia Meloni?
No. She has been negative. Anyone who refused us help with this. The situation with Iran, we don't have the same kind of relationship. Just so you know, Italy gets a lot of oil from the Strait. You can call it the Strait of Hormuz or the Strait of Hormuz. I asked, which one is better? They said either one is correct. You can call it either one. Either one is correct. Call it the Trump Strait. They don't like that idea. By the way, speaking of that, I did something that people really like, except in Mexico. I took the Gulf of Mexico and now we call it the Gulf of America. Not bad at all.
And Google changed that. Google, see?
By the way, Google was great at that.
Did you know that Europe is developing a program and a plan to open the Strait of Hormuz without the participation of the United States?
Oh, they're so sad. We're doing this now. By the way, it's opening. The ships are coming and going. There are 100 United States. This just shows how there can be one country, how there can be a group of countries with that attitude. Look at Greenland. We should have Greenland to protect the whole world today against Russia and China. Just by mentioning that, suddenly they start attacking you. A country like this shouldn't be paying trillions of dollars to NATO.
Mr. President, I want to ask about AI. It's a very important topic for our audience. And we saw that Secretary Bessent and Jay Powell had an emergency meeting with the major banks because of a risk in Anthropic's model. And the concern is that bad actors could actually break into these banks faster than financial institutions can respond. Do you see this as a systemic threat?
We're not systemic. Let's settle this. AI is vital. Billions and trillions are invested in the country because of this. It has its downsides, but it brings more benefits in medicine and in several other areas. You will discover cures for diseases you couldn't have found before. There are many good things, but we need to be careful with this. Like everything in life, we need to be careful with this. But when you tell me that Bessent is great, when you talk about Jerome Clay Powell, he is a disaster. Here is a man who took this tiny building and a few other small complexes and is spending more than $3 billion. I want to know who the contractor is, because that contractor is making billions of dollars, maybe. So he's doing a terrible job. He should be lowering the interest rates.
But do you think Kevin Walsh will be confirmed next week?
I think so. I hope so.
But the thing is, Tom Tillis is still blocking it.
Yes, but Tom Tillis is American. He knows what to do. I think he does. Let's see what happens.
Are you going to tell or maybe advise Judge Giannini to permanently close this investigation? Criminal probe into Jay Powell?
It's more than a criminal investigation. It's also an inquiry into incompetence. It's like building a small building. I built a hotel for $201 million that's bigger than that building down the street. That was 7 or 8 years ago. I built the Trump Hotel, which I sold to the Waldorf Astoria. It was a good deal. I built around $200 million worth of projects. They're going to spend maybe $4 billion. And you know what? I doubt that place will ever open. I'm very good at this. I drove by the place the other day. I was driving by. They said, take me to the Federal Reserve building. They took me there. There's very little work done inside. Maybe Kevin will never get to use that building. And he told me something very interesting. He said, the saddest part is that they demolished the most beautiful building of all. They demolished it. He said they had meeting rooms and several other spaces. In that building, they were the most beautiful in Washington. And they demolished it, what they did with that. So it's probably corruption. But actually, it's incompetence. We have to show this incompetence. He led the work. It was this guy, Jerome. Do you want to remove Jay Powell?
Yes, I do. Is it the easiest way?
That means we're going to stop an investigation of a building that I would have done for $25 million that's going to cost $4 million. Don't you think we need to find out what happened there? We have other projects like that, like the railway in California, which is 25 times more expensive than the original value. And I think they're going to end up abandoning it, okay? That's Gavin Newsom, or as I call him, Gavin Newsom. He's so bad. but that's him. But I think the Federal Reserve building is just as bad. Whether it's incompetence, corruption, or both, you have to find out. I believe that. You need to find out.
Won't you drop the probe?
No, seriously, I need to find out.
He said he doesn't want to leave here.
Well, then I'll have to fire him. Okay? If he doesn't leave on time, I'll avoid firing him. I wanted to fire him, but I hate controversy. I want to avoid controversies, but well, he will be fired.
Do you think Walsh will be confirmed? Will Tillis vote for you?
Well, we'll see. He might not do it, but then Tom Tillis isn't a senator.
Okay, about the AI issue.
Tillis isn't a senator anymore, right?
He's already leaving.
Well, no, he resigned, but he resigned. And I think he doesn't want to have the legacy of stopping a very talented person, someone who can be excellent. I think Kevin Walsh is going to be great. He doesn't want the legacy of keeping an incompetent guy there longer than necessary. I know Tom Tillis. He's a good man. I don't think he's going to hurt. He said what he said. And if it's true, he'll have to live with it, but not in the presidency. This president is terrible, really bad. I was surprised when Biden kept him, to be honest, but he did. Interest rates should be much lower than they are now.
Do you think they'll go down this year?
When Kevin comes in, yes.
Just to wrap up on AI, Mr. President, in a worst-case scenario, could it be the technology that undermines trust in the banking system?
Yes, probably. But it could also be the technology that enables greatness in the banking system, making it better, safer, and more secure.
The government needs safeguards and a kill switch.
But would there be AI? There would have to be. But never mind. You and I are leaders in AI, and in fact, we're already way ahead of China. We're building factories that no one ever imagined. And it's going to be something tremendous, bigger than the internet. It's going to be something tremendous. There are always difficulties at this stage. When you mention the banking sector, this can make the sector much bigger, much safer, and much more efficient.
About the midterm elections, do you expect the loss of Republican seats in the House, and what is the impact on your agenda?
I just met with Mike Johnson. Incredible people, great congressmen and congresswomen in the Oval Office. I think we're going to do well. Now, that being said, when someone is elected president, that party always loses the midterm elections. I don't know why. I don't know why. Nobody can explain that. I ask people who really understand psychology, I said, why does a voter vote for the opposite party? That happens even with a good president. I think I had the best first year. I read that it was the best. Look, I ended 8 wars. A 9th one is coming. But I ended 8 wars. No one has ever ended a war. Who ended one? No one. I ended 8. We made the biggest tax cut in history. We had the biggest deregulation effort of all time. The biggest economy of all, practically including the fact that I made a detour to Iran to prevent something that could have destroyed the world, right? You have a great president. They tend to lose the midterm elections. That doesn't make sense to me, so let's try to change that. You know, in 50 years, I think the president's party has won twice. Why does that happen? I don't know. We're really working hard to change that. We had the best first year in the history of the presidency, and we should get credit. Look at the border. We had a border that was like a sieve. You covered that better than anyone. Message for the elections, I deserve credit. My credit? Anything else? For what? Yes, I think we have to resume the conversation. We don't need help at the border, but, you know, I built over 1,000 miles of wall. We need to talk about this because we should be recognized for having faced this disaster where criminals were coming from all over the world and invading our country. The worst thing that ever happened was like an invasion, and we, Maria, should get the credit for that. I'm going to talk about that, but also about the fact that we gave voters the biggest tax cut in history, the biggest deregulation effort, and the best economy ever. And now what we're doing is following that path. We took care of Iran. We stopped them from they're not going to have a nuclear weapon, no way. By the way, I could leave tomorrow and they would never be able to get a nuclear weapon. For years they would, because their country is devastated. They don't have a navy, they don't have an air force, they don't have a single plane. It's all over, and the press doesn't write about it. The New York Times, you would think, if you read the New York Times, that fake and terrible newspaper, you would think they're doing well in the war. They have nothing left. They're going to make a deal. Let's see, we have to explain to the voters the excellent job we've done because there's no reason for the Republicans to lose. These people want to reopen the borders. They will impose transgender policies on all. They will allow men and women's sports and end the tax exemption on tips, overtime, and seniors' retirement. They will end everything. If they hear this, I don't see how we can lose.
Final question about space, because Artemis 2, what a success. Congratulations.
Yes, that's great.
Do you expect the United States to beat China in this race to the moon? And what do you have to say about the astronauts who orbited the moon on Artemis 2? Where is this going?
First, they were great. I spoke with them while they were orbiting as soon as they came out of the darkness. Great, they are great. I was the one who started this program. NASA was closed, completely closed. There was grass growing on the runways. I was in Florida. I looked and took pictures of all their facilities. Grass was growing on the cracked asphalt in Florida. And I said, this is terrible. Let's reactivate it. And we reactivated it. And it made us very proud. Everyone watched last night. It was something incredible. Everyone I know watched. They saw the landing. They saw the launch. That makes us proud. And something good will come from this. From a military perspective, it helps a lot. And one of my greatest achievements, I think, will be the fact that I started the Space Force, because we used to be behind Russia and China, and today we're way ahead of them.
And are we going to beat China in the race to the moon?
I think so. Look, we already won many years ago. Maybe they'll get lucky and send a spacecraft or something like that, you know? They tried to send a spacecraft yesterday, and it wasn't very successful, to say the least. I think so. I don't like to put myself in that position. If they beat us, I'll say it. I said it on Maria's show, you know? Not me, but we're trying to have it. We have Jared, a very good guy, you know? He does a great job at NASA. I'm proud of him. I think we'll win, but I'm not going to get into that. If they win, I don't want you saying Trump was wrong, Trump was wrong. What a terrible thing. The fact is that we're way ahead in space. We're way ahead in the military sector. We have the best submarines in the world. We have the best armed forces in the world. No one builds equipment like us, whether it's the Patriot or Tomahawk. We have the most advanced military equipment in the entire world, and we're going to keep it that way.
Mr. President, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.